Oh man, so it is already close to February, and that means it's time to bust out my list full of new book releases in the month of love. This month is pretty stacked. I definitely had to do my best to squeeze in as many books as I humanly could without combusting. There are so many books coming out in February. I have myself a large range of sci-fi and fantasy, mostly adult but some YA, rounding out the lineup. So many books here I think you guys are really going to like. I will say it's not as big as March will be. March and April are so freaking full of books, and I cannot wait to talk about them because some of them are my most anticipated releases of the year. It's such a large amount of books that we will never have time to read them. But before we get into this list, I want to thank Skillshare for continuing to support this channel in 2022 and sponsoring today's video. Skillshare can help make your 2022 a year full of new learning, growth, and connectivity through creativity. And we love the sound of that around here. And that's because Skillshare is an online learning community with tons of different courses and all sorts of different topics. And I swear the classes just get better and better and better every single time I check out the platform. In fact, you name the topic and I can almost guarantee you that Skillshare has a class on it because they have thousands of different classes. And one class that I've liked a lot recently is a class called Productivity for Creatives by Thomas Frank, who's a YouTuber, author, and entrepreneur. This class, you guys, is stuffed with all sorts of productivity advice, and the standout portion of this class for me was the interview he did. Who is a YouTuber and working on her PhD, and I wish I had that type of intellect and work ethic, but enough of me. Regardless of what you're interested in, go ahead and check out the link in my description box below. The first 1,000 people to use the link below will get 1 month completely free. Thanks again, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so let's go ahead and start things off. On February 1st, we have Azura Ghost. Really, was there any other way to start things off? I don't think so. This is the highly anticipated sequel to No Fake Gloss, an adult sci-fi that was published by Orbit Books in 2020. It introduced us to our main character Caden, a young boy who lost everything and joins the ranks of a misfit crew on an arcane ship to navigate a multiverse. Well, readers are finally getting the rest of Caden's story. The continuation is finally here. Makes sense since this book is much chunkier than its predecessor, and that it took some time to pump out. But the wait is no more. Asa Hansen is a very passionate SFF writer, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she pumps out in the future. February 8th has some really interesting releases, and the first one is Rise of the Mages. So this is actually a release I'll be reading in February, so look forward to that review because I am so excited about this one. It's an epic fantasy debut, and I think it's always awesome to read and review the first book by a brand new author. It just has that fresh potential to it. Plus, this book just mentions everything my nerdy heart loves, like dark rebellions, rogue wizards, and a mad king, maybe a villain to root for. It definitely has the perfect recipe to be an awesome story. It has the makings to not only be the fantasy formula we know and love, but hopefully it takes those elements I mentioned and will add like some variety to it. I wouldn't be surprised if it sets the table, because I'm ready to eat. Up next, we have Dead Silence, which is in the genre of sci-fi horror. The narrative for this one is quite bone-chilling. It's about a space crew who board a lost spaceship, but what they find is an absolute nightmare. And our main character Claire must find the truth and probably gets eaten by horrifying aliens. At least I hope that's the direction it takes. It sounds creepy and claustrophobic. Its true selling point for me though is it's being pitched as Titanic meets Alien. That was enough for me, honestly. Visually, the cover looks creepy and hopefully that reflects within the story as well. And then we have another sci-fi, and that is Bluebird. This is a debut from an LGBTQ+ author, and all you truly need to know about it to add it to your TBR is it's basically about lesbian gunslingers in space. And they are having to deal with factions fighting for control of the galaxy, which means we are in the middle of a resistance. Plus, it's a space opera with the found family trope. There's just a lot of fantastic sounding elements here. It's going to be really fun to monitor and see how well it does throughout the book community. Moving on to the 15th, another hotly anticipated fantasy release of 2022 is Age of Ash. This is a brand new start to a new fantasy series from one of the co-authors of the Expanse. That's right, and this one is still very fresh in my mind as I have already read it. I did a whole review video on it, so I highly recommend checking that out if you want like a clean cut decision on whether to pick it up or not. I really had a good time with it besides some like really minor flaws, but the city it takes place in is in a very frantic change of pace as its young prince has freshly been killed, and the entire story surrounds the events prior to that. It's like a big build-up. So whatever the heck happened to him, that's like the juices of the story. Definitely put this one on your TBR if you're looking to dive into something new and epic. The Thousand Eyes. This is the sequel to The Unspoken Name, which, full transparency, I had every meaning to read when it came out a couple years ago and never picked it up. But it's even more enticing now that there will be a sequel just waiting for you to read right after. This is a story all about an orc priestess, and I think that sounds unique as hell. Orcs are so underrated in fantasy books, and we're not talking about Lord of the Rings here. That's cheating. I would love to see this one thrive, and then we can get some like trendy orc fantasy in our lives. So if this is an adult fantasy you've also been meaning to read for a while, now is the perfect time to give it a try, and also the covers match so freaking well together. A River Enchanted. I would love to get this author under my reading belt to say I finally read from her, because I've heard great things about her YA fantasy, but it's hard to pick up a YA these days. I'm old. Makes sense. She is diving into adult for this book, and what a perfect time to try me some Rebecca Ross writing. The synopsis mentions it's a Scottish fantasy, super cool, and one of the characters you're following is a grumpy musician. Why is he grumpy? I need to know. And it follows along a more fairy tale-esque story. It sounds like a comfy, cozy read. The cover is really unique and definitely screams an adult design. We love that. Really looking forward to seeing how this one pans out. Be on the lookout for it on the 15th. Moving on to the 22nd, we have The Justice of Kings. Surely this is on everyone's reading list, and if it isn't, it should be, because this book is so freaking good. I mean, when you look at a publisher's track record, you can't help but get pumped about what Orbit Books is coming out with these days, and it's just been banger after banger with them. I do have a whole review video for this one as well. I actually reviewed it with Age of Ash, so again, check it out if you want all my spoiler-free thoughts. We are following a trio of characters who are traveling together. The most noticeable of the three is Vonvalt, who is the Emperor's Justice, whose job is to solve crimes, bring justice to the world, basically. Well, they have a run-in with a village where there's been a mysterious murder, and so brings our story that you will have to read to find out what happens next. And then we have Extasia. Claire Legrand is a very well-known author. She wrote the Furyborn books. Shoot, what was that series called? Oh, Imperium. The Imperium trilogy, I think. Well, this is going to surprise you then, because this is a horror standalone novel. And I can't help but mention that it gives me the Ring vibes, like a woman brushing her hair in the mirror during the tape. Does anyone else see that? If you know, you know. This one is all about witches and covens, villages sitting at the edge of the woods, and mysterious things living in those woods. Kind of similar sounding to The Year of the Witching. It also gives me major The Village vibes as well, which is a super weird movie. Maybe this will be super weird too, and I would not mind it. The cover is strange itself, so I'm really looking forward to it. It might surprise me. And then we have Scorpica. I've said this title wrong so many times in my head until I looked more closely today and noticed there's a freaking C there at the end. I was calling it Scorpia when it's in fact Scorpica. I still feel like I'm saying it wrong. This is the first book to a new adult fantasy series called The Five Queendoms, and the story centers on a society being ruled by women, but suddenly there is a shortage of girls being born. It sounds very ambitious, and I'm so curious as to how the kingdoms will deal with this problem they're facing. The cover looks like it might take place in a more desert environment, with it being yellow. There's a scorpion on the handle of the knife. There's also mention of a drought, so I could be wrong, but I could always use more books similar to The 12 Kings and Sharakai, so I'm excited about this one. So that's going to do it for my list today. Though February is a slightly slower month than what March is going to be, there is still plenty of new books to choose from, plenty of reasons to be excited. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments, what books I didn't mention that you're excited for. Also, don't forget to check out Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use my link in the description box below will get 1 month completely free. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and until we meet again, happy reading.